spoilers? Oh, lots and lots of spoilers.
And now, at Max Mike Movies, in our series Leave 'Em Wanting More, we bring you Batman. Hello out there, all you happy Gotham people. You know what? I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman. Yeah, I know, but doing that Christian Bale growl is really hard on my throat, and let's face it, it has been done to death.
That's so sad.
Yes, this week we're discussing a major entry into the rapidly growing genre of the comic book movie The Dark Knight, the second in Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, following Batman Begins and preceding Batman Finishes Up and puts the chairs up on the tables, because, come on, isn't this enough already? I'm your host, Max Levine, or as I'm otherwise known, the Crimson Wallaby. And there, lurking in the shadows, is every move a symphony of menace, is your other host and my arch nemesis, Baron Mudpuppy, a.k.a. Mike Luce.
Mudpuppy?
How you doing, Baron Mudpuppy?
Fine, how are you, Crimson Wallaby? I mean, grrr, take you down.
I am filled with justice. But before we get to the trivia on this movie, I understand you had something you wanted to say.
I did. I have two things I'd like to say.
And that was it. So, on to trivia.
No.
All right. Yes.
So, hey, Max and I were thinking, and yes, it was painful, and no, it doesn't happen very often.
It's all hot and it hurts.
Max and I were thinking about a possible thing we might do, because, you know, social media has expanded, changed, etc. And we are going to need your help, because we want to see, A, if this is something you'd be interested in, and B, what kind of format it would take.
Yeah.
So, apparently some of these shows, these podcast things, occasionally do live shows, live broadcasts. And we were wondering, we found out through this, it's not called Bandcamp, what the hell is it called?
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse. That it is possible to have basically a call-in show. So, if you think this is a cool idea, being one of our listeners, hey, let us know through one of the ways that you probably know, but we'll go over at the end of the show.
Please keep in mind that at the moment, Clubhouse only works on Apple devices, basically iOS or iPad OS. At the moment, it will eventually supposedly move over and expand.
Yeah, but also, we would obviously choose to do this probably on a weekend when most people are free. Mm-hmm. I don't know the logistics of this, whether we could record it or not. If we can, we will, and then post it. But if not, you know, it'll be a one-time thing for those who can show up. And hey, what would you want us to do? What kind of show would you want it to be? Would you want it to be about a single movie? Would you like to just be open forum? Like, hey, I want to talk about my favorite films. Let us know. There's comments, there's email. You can text us if you have to. By us, I mean me, because no one ever texts Max. They just text me. But yeah, it's an idea we're trying to punt around, see how it goes, and if it sounds cool to you and you're interested, hey, let us know. And if we don't hear anything, we'll still do it. It'll just be me and Max talking to each other like normal.
As it always is. Yep.
Yeah. The other thing, this is a message to our listeners. We would like to thank you very much for listening. As always, we are not brought to you by Sanka. Sanka, we're still here. We're still hot. We're still brown.
You're still fired. God.
Hey, could be
making
worse.
me long for the days of Total Warfare and Terrorist, whatever, 3.
I think you mean Rogue Warfare. I can't even say it. Rogue Warfare 3.
Rogue Werewolf 3, yes.
Meanwhile, back at Zangief's ass, hey, I understand there is trivia.
There is trivia.
The show.
The Dark Knight. First off, it's the only the 3 Batman movies that does not actually have the name Batman in the title.
Batman.
Now, the budget was $185 million, and its cumulative worldwide gross was over $1 billion. That's billion with a B. It made more in the first 6 days of its showing than Batman Begins did in its entire domestic run.
There's a bee? Sorry, that one's that's a deeper.
This was filmed partly, at least, in Chicago, which is, for those of us who are hardcore comic book nerds, we all know that Chicago is basically the DC analog of Gotham City, just as Metropolis is New York City. Which is weird because Gotham, it was a nickname for New York City.
Well, the best part is we find out later that, of course, Gotham City and Metropolis are right across the river from...
Yes, as we know from Batman v Superman in Superior Court.
I think it was Batman versus Superman versus the audience, but that's,
yes.
you know...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the audience lost.
Yeah.
While filming a chase scene on Lake Street, the Chicago PD got a whole bunch of calls from concerned citizens saying the police were involved in a vehicle pursuit with a weird-looking dark vehicle of unknown make or model. While filming that chase scene with the Joker and the SWAT vans, one of only 4 IMAX cameras in the world at the time was destroyed.
Oops.
Yeah, part of that movie was actually filmed in IMAX with one of only 4 existing cameras, and they busted it.
And to that, I have to say...
There was a lot of marketing on this movie, and some of the PR stunts were a bit troubling.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, during one public relations campaign, a website related to the movie sent out several cakes, supposedly from the Joker, containing a cell phone inside, which made the cake vibrate, and had wires sticking out, making the cake look like a bomb.
Ah!
One news station got one of the cakes, thought it was a real terrorist act, and the whole building was evacuated. Now, this was 2008. This was not that, it's 7 years after 9/11. So
I bet the person who opened the box was evacuated, too, if you know what I mean.
What does he mean?
It's disgusting. I'll tell you later.
There was some really weird interactive marketing campaigns launched, too. One of them was at the 2007 San Diego Comic-Con. The event was called Why So Serious, where fans had to follow clues hidden around the city. A whole bunch of, Joker-painted fans ended up congregating in the street across from the convention center, where all of a sudden a black Escalade pulled up, welcomed one of the fans to climb in. After a minute, as the door was closing, the fans started screaming, and the SUV sped away. Later that day, a so-called Gotham City newspaper was circulated reporting that a man believed to be the Joker was found beaten to death. Included were crime scene photos of the fan who had gotten into the Escalade, and eventually he was found with a playing card in his hand on which was scribbled, "See you in December."
Wow.
Yeah, real friggin' tasteful.
And I thought the movie was dark.
In Batman Begins, by the way, and I believe in this one also, we see the Lamborghini that Bruce Wayne drives. That is, they call it, or it's written on it, the Lamborghini Murcielago. Murcielago, which is, by the way, the Spanish word for bat.
There you go. So I'll take a step back to your last one. Should we, in fact, call that darkening?
No, we should under no circumstances call it that.
Bumpy, I'm going to need a ride real quick.
You really are. Christian Bale got to keep the Batman mask from the movie after the filming. He wanted the whole uniform, but he didn't have enough room for it.
In what?
I don't know. His car?
Oh.
He also said he didn't Christian Bale didn't bulk up quite as much as he did for the first movie because the suit fit differently. It was designed to be lighter and quicker, so he didn't have to be quite as huge. We do, of course, have to talk about poor Heath Ledger. Yeah.
I'm sure we will.
Many said made the movie. He, of course, died shortly after the filming. And by the way, he died after it was all done. He post, looping, everything. In preparation for his role, Heath Ledger hid away in a motel room for about 6 weeks. During the extended seclusion, he delved into the psychology of the character. He was working on every facial tic, every vocal tic, the sadistic-sounding laugh. He was really trying to create a tone that had nothing to do with Jack Nicholson in the '89 performance as the Joker. Ledger's interpretation of the Joker's appearance was kind of based on the chaotic, disheveled look of punk rocker Sid Vicious, the mannerisms of Malcolm McDowell's character Alex DeLarge from Clockwork Orange.
Wow.
Yeah. Heath Ledger posthumously won 32 Best Actor in a Supporting Role awards for his work, including the Big Five: Oscar, Golden Globe, BAFTA, SAG, and Critics' Choice.
Cripes.
Yeah. Sir Michael Caine, in his opinion, he thought Heath Ledger beat the odds and topped Jack Nicholson's Joker from Batman '89. I quote, to quote Michael Caine in my terrible Michael Caine voice, Jack was like a clown figure. Benign but wicked, maybe a killer old uncle. He could be funny and make you laugh. Heath's gone in a completely different direction to Jack. He's like a really scary psychopath. He's a lovely guy, and his Joker is going to be a hell of a revelation in this picture. And he bases his belief on how good Ledger was on the scene where the Joker visits Bruce Wayne's penthouse and crashes the party. This is the first time that Michael Caine met Heath Ledger. They hadn't met on the set until that scene. And when Ledger arrived and went into his performance, Caine got so scared he forgot his lines.
Wow.
Yeah.
For somebody who's delivered a hell of a lot of lines, that's... Wow, okay.
Think about that. There's all sorts of stuff about the terrifying stunts. The bus, in the beginning, the bus crashing backwards into the bank in the opening sequence, that was a lot harder to pull off than they thought it would be. The bus had to be taken apart and reassembled inside the building, concealed behind a false wall, and then propelled backwards with an air cannon. The building, by the way, was a disused post office. There is a ton of other stuff, a lot of it about Heath Ledger. I do want to say, just at the outset, to get this out of the way, he did die of a toxic drug reaction. No one, including his family, his friends, ever believed it was intentional. They really think it was accidental. He was in a good place mentally. He was really excited about the movie. It is a real sadness and a real tragedy that he died so young, because the man was remarkably talented.
Yeah. So that's it for trivia?
That's pretty much it for trivia.
Tell me a story, Daddy.
Yes, the plot. It's been a year since Batman began, and criminals now live in terror of the Batman. But a new threat arises in the form of a madman with clown makeup and seriously unwashed hair, the Joker. His brand of brilliant madness is like nothing Batman has ever faced. Attempting to aid him is Jim Gordon, now police commissioner, well, halfway through the movie, and crusading district attorney Harvey Dent, whose nickname and fondness for two-headed coins make his fate a foregone conclusion to anyone who knows the Batman mythos.
He becomes King Tut.
Yes. As the Joker turns the city against the Batman, the caped crusader must ask himself, how far will he go to protect the city, and what is he willing to sacrifice?
The lowdown.
In answer to that last question, I think the thing he was willing to sacrifice was, in fact, cheeseburgers.
Yeah, that's right. He gave up cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
And he could do it. You know why he could do it? Because he's Batman. You know that was going to happen at least once. It's probably going to happen several more times.
Probably, but hey, yeah. I'm the little brother in this show. Right. Where to start?
I do have to say that clearly the critics were entirely wrong. The truly definitive Joker was, of course, Cesar Romero. And his mustache.
That statement by Michael Caine, I think he's really outdone Jack Nicholson. Not really all that hard to do.
Hey, Jack did a decent job as the Joker. I thought it was a very interesting take, and it was a very different take than had been seen before.
For that movie.
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen, because there are people who, because the 89 was now quite a ways ago, 31 years ago, 32 years ago. I was working at a comic book store at the time. And when we started seeing stuff about this new the first thing we heard, unfortunately, and I still believe this was not the best choice in the world, was that Michael Keaton was going to be playing Batman and Bruce Wayne. And I'm sorry, he just doesn't have the presence.
Interesting choice, yeah.
Yeah, I like him as an actor. I loved him as the Vulture. He was great in the Spider-Man movie. He was great. But he's not Batman. And he proved it twice as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But we started seeing things and hearing things. The manager of the comic store I was working at the time was the man who would end up writing the novelization. So he actually got to go to England and see the sets and walk down Gotham City, the 3 blocks that existed. And we were all really excited because we're like, they're finally taking Batman seriously. It's not going to be like the 60s. We're away from the 60s. And at the time, we loved that film. Looking back, it's like, it's not that far from the 60s.
Yeah. They make kind of a comment on that in this when Bruce Wayne is talking to Lucius Fox and asking for a new redesign on the suit. He says, "I'd like to be able to turn my head."
Yeah.
Because that was a problem with the '89 Batman suit. If you looked carefully at the cowl, it was a solid piece of rubber, and he had to turn his entire torso to look anywhere.
Yeah, I like that he said it'll make backing up a lot easier, which is funny because there is no way you can look behind you in the Batmobile. I'm sorry, the Tumbler, I think is what its actual name is. There's no window. There's nothing. Fun thing about that, I actually watched a little Jay Leno's Garage recently. That car moved entirely under its own power. That thing was a beast. It is totally drivable. It is not in any way street legal. I forget how many 100 horsepower it has, and they were like, we have to build this thing so it works, and it does, and it is a monster to drive. It's hell to get into. You have to claw on through the top.
Speaking of vehicles or movement things that actually work, the skyhook technique where basically Batman is scooped up by a plane, that's real.
Well, we saw that in a Bond film.
Yes, it was, back in 1965. It was a real thing the CIA used. It was called the Fulton Surface-to-Air Recovery System. They used to use it, and apparently it is traumatic in terms of the impact, but less so than having a parachute open, at least according to like the 2 or 3 people who talked about actually being in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is real. That is the actual thing being scooped up by a damn aeroplane.
There's a lot probably to talk about in this film. I think because you brought it up, and of course it's going to be that thing, I would like to talk about the performances.
Yeah.
Christian Bale does fine in this.
Yeah, he does. I think he does a really good job. I think he balances nicely with the Bruce Wayne persona of the utterly disconnected playboy.
Well, but you also get the idea that he is playing a part within a part, right? Because you can tell when he's Bruce Wayne and he's out and about.
Yeah,
that it's that it's fake. Like it feels like somebody playing a part, which is cool. And the people that are closest to him are like, you can see Rachel every once in a while just sort of roll her eyes, is like, why is he doing this? Yeah, and it's like, because I have to look like Tony Stark. That's why. And as Batman, they thankfully keep his lines very short. They don't have quips.
Yeah. Yep, he doesn't call anybody old chum.
No, yeah. And, he does a good job. Michael Caine, I mean, even when Michael Caine's in a terrible film, Michael Caine is fine. And I think it must be nice for him because he actually gets to use his real accent.
I thought he made a great Alfred because Michael Caine is so physically imposing, even in his later years. You absolutely believe that Alfred was a soldier.
Yeah. One of the other people I want to point out, and I will point him out in any film I've seen him in, is Gary Oldman is amazing. And you might say, well, he's just Commissioner Gordon. He's like, what's the big deal? If you've seen Gary Oldman in any other film, you'll realize this is not like any other character. There's this wonderful combination of fear and hope in Jim Gordon. And I actually rewatched the first film, I watched most of it, because I didn't remember Batman Begins, and actually I didn't even remember the title.
Oh, dear.
And it's like, oh, yeah, that's the first one. And I'm watching, and Jim Gordon in the first film is this guy who's like really at the end of his rope. He's a cop and to be honest, Gotham City in that film looks a lot worse than it does in this film. Like the whole Narrows is not amazingly missing in this film. Like that whole island is just not even there. They don't even pretend it's there. But he's just like this close to having no hope. But he's still like, you can see that there's a good man in there, and he's trying desperately to hold on to something. And in this film, you see him start off with still like, I'm still working, but he has more hope, but he's also still this good guy. But then you see the fear again when his family's taken, and it's just not the roles he's played in other films, and you really buy Jim Gordon.
It's a surprisingly understated role.
Yeah.
He does it very well. I also have to say, Maggie Gyllenhaal does a terrific job as Rachel.
Yeah, she's not given a lot to do.
She doesn't get a lot to do, but even the little bits she does, I'm sorry, Katie Holmes, Katie Holmes was in the first movie the same character and completely forgettable, did not bring any sense of character or personality. But
I watched the movies back to back, night to night, and I didn't realize they were different actors.
oh dear. Wow. Ms. Gyllenhaal, I would like to apologize on behalf of my boneheaded co-host.
No, what I'm saying is actually for Katie Holmes, I watched Rachel in this film, and in the previous film, I just sort of ignored her. So I was like, oh, they just didn't give her anything to do. In this case, they give her some to do. And the thing I like about her is she's very competent. The only time when she's a, quote, damsel in distress, her boyfriend is equally a damsel in distress and becomes Two-Face. And I like the fact that there is some strength in her, and also that she finally makes a decision, and she's like, Bruce, I can't do it. I'm sorry, you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and Harvey isn't yet. So
she brings up a nice point. She says, I told you, if the day that the city didn't need Batman anymore, that we could be together, but I'm realizing the city might not need Batman, but you'll never not need Batman. You will always need him. So, and other cast, Morgan Freeman is great as Lucius Fox.
Well, it's Morgan Freeman. So again, you're not going to get a bad performance. But Lucius Fox is a great character. I think he's
only a great character here.
Yeah.
He showed up, I believe he was one of the characters created for Batman the Animated Series. I'm not positive of that. I think so. And he's not that interesting.
I like it because he is the last moral compass for Batman, because they create this device which magic, but it can scan the entire city using everyone's cell phones. He's just like, no, I don't want to be a part of this. Here's my resignation. I'm leaving. And Batman's like, tell me another way we find the Joker. And he's like, okay, I'll do this once. And you can see even when he says that, he's like, I'm damning myself for doing this.
Yeah.
And thankfully, they do end up destroying the ability to do that later on. But I like the fact that he is just in charge. I love it when that subordinate comes up and it's like, hey, I found out who Batman is, and I want $10 million a year. And he just slowly takes his glasses off.
Oh, his response is great.
So, you find out who Batman is, and you decide the best thing to do is to try and blackmail him.
Yeah, he says, you just figured out that your boss, one of the richest and most powerful men in the world, is a vigilante who routinely goes out every night and beats people to a pulp with his bare hands, and your response is to blackmail him. I love what he puts it. Good luck with that. And
sorry, Mr. Luthor.
And as he's saying it, the guy, you can just see the guy's face going, I did not think this through.
You know what I saw is when they turned back to the guy, I saw the guy peeing his pants.
Did you catch, and I only know this from the trivia, I didn't, because the character is not that important.
No.
Did you catch what his name is?
It's weird, and I can't remember what it was.
It doesn't matter what his first name is. They keep referring to him as Mr. Reese. Mr. Reese.
Oh, it's not supposed to be Edward Nygma, is it?
No, it's sort of a nod to Edward Enigma, the Riddler. But I thought that was unnecessary, and I'm glad I never noticed it before.
I didn't either, and whatever. So let's get to the big elephant in the room, Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger.
I first came across him in one of those dreadful, we have to have a Xena or Hercules-based show called Roar.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very short-lived. It was a fantasy-based thing. I don't remember much about it. I saw a few episodes, and I distinctly remember going, who's that guy? Because that guy, I don't know who he is, but he's interesting. And, of course, it was the lead, and he was played by Heath Ledger. To be fair, didn't he do Knight's Tale? Knight's
Tale was the first thing I saw him in, and that movie, while utterly goofy, is so much fun. Yeah, it has such an amazing cast also. He's in it. Paul Bettany is in it as Geoffrey Chaucer. Alan Tudyk is in it. Shannon Sossanen. Oh, it's terrific. It's a lot of fun. It is not deep. It does. If you look at it with any critical eye, it falls apart completely.
Oh, we should do that.
Historian, people who know anything about the medieval France or England pretty much will have a hemorrhage.
Isn't there a lot of rock music in it, too?
I mean, at the first tournament, the crowd is singing "We Will Rock You."
Ah, yes, very popular.
Yes,
medieval
there's a lot
times.
of pop music in it, but the thing is, it works. But anyway, he was great in that he was incredibly likable and charming. But I gotta say, this performance was a revelation. That I remember going into it thinking, okay, I thought Jack Nicholson did a terrific job. And honestly, I was mad because couldn't you have gotten Mark Hamill? Because Mark Hamill did the voice of the Joker in Batman the Animated Series, and he redefined the character. And he just made it amazing.
You know what this movie needs? More me!
Just with that incredible balance of growling menace and clown goofiness. And Heath Ledger blew them all away.
Yeah, it is a troubling performance for a number of reasons. Now, you and I did see him before this. Yeah. Max and I went to see Brokeback Mountain. No, he's not. Right. Yes, I am. It's fine. And the interesting thing about that film, we saw it in the middle of winter at a local art house theater. And sadly, about 20 minutes before the movie ended, the theater was like, hey, we've got an alert. We have to evacuate the theater. Hopefully it'll just be a few minutes, but we'll see. And we went out, and I think it was like 12. It was really cold out.
Yeah, it was friggin' cold.
And Max and I were standing out there and waiting. And we're like, how long do we wait? I don't know. And it's like, it's 20 minutes before the end of the film, or like half hour, something like that. Yeah. And they were saying, hey, it's getting to be a little bit longer. If anybody likes, we'll give you a pass. You can come back. I got to say, nobody in our theater took a pass.
The whole theater, we all just said, no, we'll wait, because we had to see how it ended.
And that performance... Yeah. Talk about understated, because it's him and Jake Gyllenhaal. And Jake Gyllenhaal does a fine job, don't get me wrong. But the two characters, for those who don't know, it's two guys who are supposedly straight. They're out in the middle of nowhere watching this flock of sheep, I think it is. And they eventually realize that they are really attracted to each other. And one thing leads to another, and they do what cowboys sometimes did and often didn't. And what would happen is that they would meet like once a year because they got married, they each had kids, whatever, but they would meet once a year because they loved each other and they knew they couldn't be together. And eventually what happens is, and we're never sure what the actual demise of the Jake Gyllenhaal character is, but the Jake Gyllenhaal character dies. And there is this scene where, I think his name's Emmett, Heath Ledger's character comes in, and I think it's either his wife or his daughter, I can't remember, is still in the house. And he manages to go up to the closet, and there's one shirt left that the Jake Gyllenhaal character wore. And he takes it, and he just smells it once. And he can't even bring himself to cry. He is that emotionally broken. And there's like no dialogue in that scene, and I will always remember just the look on his face of somebody who is utterly closed off his emotions for the rest of his life, however long that's going to be. And you place that performance, especially next to this one, and it's like, dear gods, that's a range. You know, what are we going to see next? And It was like River Phoenix, the same thing. River Phoenix, I adored him in Stand By Me. I really liked him in My Own Private Idaho. And then The Viper Club, and that was the end of that. But
yeah, he does, and in this he does an amazing job. He brings this. It's one of the only times I ever found the Joker actually scary.
It is also one of the only times I ever found the Joker not funny. And I had a question. One of my questions was: this is a great performance. It is a really interesting take. Does this Joker actually work?
I think it works. I think he works better than a lot of the others have. I mean, the whole idea, as opposed to just, look at this, my skin's been bleached white, my hair's green, so I'm going to become evil. I like the fact we don't know what his origin is. You don't need to know where the Joker came from. I loved the whole, did I ever tell you how I got these scars? And the story changes every time.
And they're all horrible.
because it doesn't matter. Apart from the scars, we get the feeling he's just we know he's just wearing makeup and hair dye.
Yeah.
He's not, he didn't fall in a vat of acid or what have you.
He wasn't the Red Hood, which came later for reasons we don't, whatever, yeah.
It's like he is the Joker, and that's all he is. He's nothing else. It's like nothing came before him. He came into the world as the Joker, and I think that really works. And as he points out, he doesn't do this for money. He's an agent of chaos. Alfred is the one who gets him. Mm-hmm. And he says, there are some men who just like to watch the world burn.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, I was almost surprised that he doesn't actually die. But I'm not sure what you would do with him after this, which, for whatever reason, I don't know if they were even planning to before poor Heath Ledger died. And I heard the same thing. I heard that it wasn't anything on purpose, but that he was taking medications because he was in a really weird mental place. And what happened was the cocktail got mixed up. And it was accidental for sure, but that some of the medication he was taking was and I don't know if it was this role or just in general he was having a hard time, but he certainly doesn't sound like he was doing himself any favors. I'm going to go live by myself for 6 weeks and not talk to people and try to come up with all these okay. I mean, it worked, but dear gods, what a price to pay. The reason I ask about if the Joker does the Joker work is because I want to say, and I'm not a fan of the third film so much, but this is about as dark as Batman ever gets. And hopefully ever will
on film, yes.
Name me a place he's darker.
Arkham Knights, Court of Owls.
Because he's throwing dogs, he's torturing people. I mean, the only thing he doesn't actually do is shoot anybody. And usually one of the big deals is that we're looking at a contrast between Batman and the people he's going after. Mm-hmm. And, Batman, for those who haven't read the original comics, at one point had a gun. Actually, I think he had two of them.
He did kill people in the original. Yeah. He absolutely did, intentionally. It wasn't like, oh no, you accidentally fell into this acid after I stamped on your hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, Batman started out as a very dark and very violent character back in the, 20s?
No, 1939.
Late 30s, okay.
Yep. For what, and I want to get this out of the way too. The credit where it says Batman created by Bob Kane. No!
Yeah,
for one thing.
Bill Finger, thank you.
And Jerry Robinson, and amongst others. And to be fair, there's a lot of things that he was, shall we say, inspired by. And inspired by is being kind.
Yeah, the Joker in particular was inspired by an old silent film called The Man Who Laughs.
Yep, and it was, it was an actor, we talked about this, because he ended up being in Casablanca, which is funny, but, and if you see pictures, again, if you want to go take pictures, look at pictures of The Man Who Laughs, it's like, oh, yeah, that's the Joker.
Yeah, and it was 20 years before the Joker ever showed up.
You see Batman, and he's very, very dark. And one of the things that I actually have as a complaint's a heavy word, but as a critique of the film is he's not really much of a detective either. And he's supposed to be. Now, he uses some tools to kind of find him, but one of the big things is it's almost, I swear there's moments where Alfred's almost like, would you like me to tell you how you should be thinking of how this guy works? Because it's like Batman doesn't, he's always playing catch up. You never see him really trying to plan ahead. And the Joker, quite honestly, I don't know how he gets everything done that he gets done, because it's kind of a lot. All of the barrels, all of the bombs, all of the phone numbers, all of the this, all of the that, in this short period of time is kind of a lot. And at one point I'm like, when does he? How does he have time to talk to anybody? Like, how does he do other things? Because all this stuff, it's like there's just seemed to be a little too much. Like, I know they're all going to take these ferry boats, so I'll just happen to put all these bombs on these ferry boats. And
it even contradicts himself a little bit when he's talking to Harvey Dent in the hospital, and he says, "Do I look like the kind of guy with a plan?"
Yeah. And it's like he has to.
Clearly he does. He plans things out very elaborate. Well, I think the idea is he is an expert tactician, but he has no strategy. He's really good at planning out individual situations, but he has no overall plan. He just likes She just likes to blow things up. He just likes to see chaos and death and fear.
And since we brought him in, let's bring in old Harvey, shall we?
And that's right, Aaron Eckhart, who I think does a really great job as Harvey Dent.
Yes.
Once he becomes Two-Face awfully fast.
Yes.
This is a problem, by the way, with a lot of superhero movies.
Yes.
Now, for some reason, no one thinks you can have just one villain. This started in Batman Begins. We got both the Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul, both of whom are major villains.
Right.
In this, we get the Scarecrow again, which I didn't entirely object to because I think Cillian Murphy does a great job.
Yes.
He's so creepy and oily and just... Of course, I never really thought of the Scarecrow as seeming, I don't know, moist. But that's how he comes across.
Well, in the first film, because in this film he's barely there, and I think it's literally the director was like, Chris Nolan was like, "Oh, right, we didn't arrest him last film, did we? Yeah, about that."
Yeah. He also has a cameo in the third movie, so he's, I think, the only villain who makes it through all three movies.
Yeah.
But and then in the third movie you get Bane, you get Catwoman. Yeah. I don't
even there's a reference to cats in this film. It's like, we know where you're going.
Yes, yeah.
It's so.
But again, I thought he did a nice job. I thought Aaron Eckhart's performance was really good. It came on a little fast. Although I do have to say, the conversion scene where the Joker meets him in the hospital and is basically talking him into becoming a supervillain, is basically talking him to becoming an agent of chaos. He is really friggin' persuasive. And I absolutely can buy that Dent, in his state of mind, would turn that way, would listen to that and want to become an agent of destruction.
So, my feeling, and I felt this way when I saw the film when it came out, this was an opening night thing, I'm sure, and I feel this way now, is that Harvey Dent / Two-Face is one element too many. And I don't mean Harvey Dent, because I actually really like the contrast of Harvey Dent, and honestly the hopefulness of Bruce Wayne that, hey, here's someone who can do my job, I won't have to do it, I'm going to back this guy, thank you, this is great. And Harvey is a Boy Scout, but you believe him. He's not like, oh gosh, we should take care of those nasty...
Yeah, he's a Boy Scout, but you can also see he's ambitious. And, maybe he plays a little fast and loose here. And, they even that's where his name came from, when he worked for Internal Affairs. They used to call him Harvey Two-Face.
Right.
Because the cops didn't trust him. Yeah, he is a good guy. He's a white knight as opposed to the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But he's also a believable human being. I mean... Hell, he cheats at everything because he has it with that, hey, heads we do this, tails we do that, and he has a two-headed coin.
Or then he just tosses it again until he gets what he wants.
Yeah.
The problem is that the Two-Face, for one thing, when Rachel dies, spoiler, because I don't know how you haven't seen this and you're listening to our show, but whatever, there's still an hour, there was 55 minutes to go in that movie, and it is not a short film.
Yeah, it's 2.5 hours.
Yeah, just like the first one. The one thing I cannot understand that makes absolutely no sense to me is we see him turn into a supervillain, and now he's going to get revenge on everyone he thinks, quote unquote, killed his family. Except one person. He doesn't shoot the Joker. He has got an opportunity. The Joker has put a gun in his hand, and Harvey, who we've seen before he gets turned into Two-Face, punches a guy in court who tries to shoot him. Doesn't shoot the Joker. And I watched that, I'm like, I don't buy it. It's like I can't see him going, I'm on your side now. I don't know. I don't buy it.
No, because he also understand that was what was so clever about what the Joker did. He said, you don't understand. He says what the others did. He's like a mad dog. You want the guys who are holding the leash. That's why he goes after the crime bosses. He goes after Marconi. I don't know what Eric Roberts was doing in this, but okay. Although Eric Roberts is very good at playing a creepy mobster.
Yeah.
But
you can say that, but he was willing to kill Jim Gordon's kid, and he wasn't willing to kill the Joker?
Well, as he says, he gives the Joker a chance. We don't see it, but he flips the coin, and we have to assume it came up clear. I do believe if it had come up dark side, he would have shot the Joker.
Oh, Darkseid's another film. We're not going there.
Yeah.
Get my boom tube ready.
How quick, Brandy? Goodness, let's go. Yeah.
Do you have your mother box? Yeah, that's from somebody who never really read DC comics much. The Harvey Dent Two-Face thing, the rest of the movie, which admittedly is really, really dark, and I don't mean like, oh, it's at night, because it is.
No,
mostly.
it's like that. You can't trust anybody. Although there is some optimism there. That I want to talk about the ferries, the two boats.
And that one criminal, the big black guy criminal who's like, I'm going to do what you should have done an hour ago. I want to know more about that guy. He's got like 2 lines.
He gets 2 lines. That was Tom Tiny Lister, who has been in everything. You also know him as the president from Fifth Element.
Okay.
But he plays big. He is a big, enormous, scary guy who plays big. He died recently. Big, enormous, scary guys. Yeah, that whole thing where there are two ferries, the Joker sabotages them. He puts enormous amounts of explosives, which no one seems to understand how to unplug, on these boats. One boat is full of criminals being transported from prison. Another boat's just full of random civilians evacuating the city. They're each given a detonator. Said, hi, you have the detonator to the bomb on the other boat. If one of you doesn't blow the other one up by midnight, I'll blow up both boats. And he is expecting them to blow each other up, because in his worldview, everyone, as Batman says, what did you want to prove? That everyone is as sick as you are? And they won't do it, even though you're absolutely sure they will. There's this one jerk on the civilian boat who's going, well, they made their choice, and he takes a detonator, and he can't do it.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. The moment on the other boat is so much more powerful when this huge, menacing convict gets up, walks over to the captain who's got the detonator and says, give it to me, and I'll do what you should have done 10 minutes ago. You can tell them I took it from you.
Yeah.
If you don't, they're all going to... And the captain gives it to him, and he walks over and he chucks it out the window.
Yep. And I think the other cool thing is all of the other convicts around him accept it.
They're just like, nodding, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's...
And again, I want to know more about that character. Sadly, we never will. But it's amazing sometimes when a few lines and a performance can be that amazing, and it was. I think what the Joker was expecting is he was fully expecting the one boat to blow up the criminal's boat. Like, that's what he was either expecting and or hoping for. It's like, see, there's no goodness in the city. But that's a pretty sliver, like, ray of sunshine in this otherwise really, really... And this is a theme with DC. Back in the 80s, for people who don't know, Batman had been around forever and his Batcave had the giant penny and the Tyrannosaurus Rex and other goofy stuff. He wasn't Jewel Kryptonite goofy, but he was goofy. And this guy came around, this originally he was working for Marvel, did a series called Daredevil. This guy came around named Frank Miller, and he says, no, I want Batman to grow up. I want to do Batman for the adults who are reading these comics. And he came out with this thing called Batman The Dark Knight Returns, on which this film is not in any way based. And it's old cranky Batman who's basically built like a tank, and it's sort of post-apocalyptic, kind of.
No, it's not post-apocalyptic. I got to disagree. It's just that society is decaying. It's much scarier than a post-apocalyptic. There hasn't been a war or a zombie plague. It's just, things just have kept getting worse and worse.
Which is unfortunately not entirely okay.
Yeah. And Batman is in his 50s, and he hasn't put on the mask in, 20 years?
Something, yeah. And he comes back because things have gotten that much worse.
We don't want to describe the whole series. That's going to take forever.
It was DC starting to go, we need to compete. We need to be realistic and dark and gritty. And I got to say, in comparison, Dark Knight Returns is nowhere near as dark as gritty as this movie is. But it's what DC decided they needed to start doing to get their quote-unquote more mature audience. And they usually are really bad at it.
Yeah.
And their idea of dark and gritty is literally like turning off one of the lights and mentioning drugs or something. And
this one works. We also have to remember, this was like one of the most successful superhero movies up to this point. This is 2008. The Marvel Cinematic Universe hasn't started yet.
No.
We haven't even gotten Iron Man.
Nope.
This was a serious comic book movie. They tried to do that with Batman Begins, just didn't do it quite as well. This was the start of a real trend.
Well, Batman Begins, I think one of the issues is, for one thing, we get to see Batman's origin again.
Yeah,
although this time it involves Ra's al Ghul because reasons and stuff.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Ra's al Ghul is, I'm going to say, probably the biggest, least known Batman villain. Because your average person, they're going to know the Joker, they're going to go to the Riddler, Catwoman. After that, it gets a little, maybe the Archer.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
or
Connie.
Who was Liberace playing?
He played, it was just a name. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. There was Louis the Lilac, played by
this is all from the TV show, by the way, the 1966 TV show, so it doesn't count.
Ra's al Ghul is it's also a villain's name that nobody knew how to pronounce.
Yeah, because it's spelled Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah. Well, but it's Ra's, R-A-apostrophe-S, so it's like, oh, Ra, like the sun god. It's Ra's al Ghul. So this is Al Ghul who belongs to Ra. But whatever.
No, apparently it's Ra's. But yeah.
And again, so they bring in Qui-Gon Jinn. Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, it was an interesting casting choice to have Liam Neeson as the Arabic character Ra's al Ghul.
Well,
especially because I kept thinking
at some point expect them to start doing a gruff off. Yeah, I'm Batman. Yes, and you're the I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen to you. Let my family go.
Yeah, that's like, yes, you may be Batman, but I have a very specific set of skills.
And I'm Irish, and you're not. It was big, and there was Tibet, and then I actually honestly thought that Gotham City in the first film looked a little too Tim Burton-like, because it had that weird elevated train that was way higher and way spindlier than any elevated train would be. I mean, we're missing the giant statues, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And this one, it's just like, Chicago. They actually don't really look anything alike from the first film to the second film.
No, visually they're very different.
And I think what is interesting is that after the success of these three films, because even if the third film wasn't, I don't think it was very good, I think it was still relatively successful.
Yeah, it was fairly successful, but no.
I think both Chris Nolan and Christian Bale were like, yeah, we're done. We've done this. And it honestly was a good story arc. We didn't necessarily need more Batman, except there's no way we're not going to get more Batman. So they're like, well, we can like gritty down our other heroes, and they started doing weird things to Superman. Like that one with Kevin Costner as his dad. I mean, that was just, I did a whole thing on that, but it's just like, wow, Superman's dad's a dick. No, save the dog, but not me. Huh? Okay, whatever.
Should I have let a whole busload of children die? Maybe. What?
Yeah, to keep your secret identity? Yes.
Dad? Jeez.
But this film is about as dark as it's gonna get. And I actually had to ask myself, is this a superhero movie or a horror film? Because at times you're not sure. And it's all Heath Ledger. Because the scariest, creepiest, oh my God, I think I'm going to have nightmare parts are all Heath Ledger. But although there's also a couple little throwaways things. Did you catch the Rosa Klebb moment?
Oh, with the knife in his shoe? Yeah. Peanuts, Mr. Bond.
I mean, I caught that and it made me laugh because, Rosa Klebb was this villain and
we talked about her back in From Russia with Love.
She had a knife in her shoe, and of course they make fun of this in the Austin Powers film. Yep. Who throws his shoe?
Well, no, that was making fun of Odd Job throwing his hat.
But the shoe part was from... Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was funny. It didn't work there. It didn't work for Rosa either. But the humor, even when it's there, is still pretty damn dark. And there's a couple of things that other throwaway lines. Batman at one point says, "I'm not wearing hockey pants." That's going to be the quote of the film.
Yeah. Or when Heath Ledger, when the Joker's blowing up the hospital, and he's doing that, but he's dressed as a nurse. He's in drag. And yet there's nothing funny about it. There's nothing... It's just, again, somehow he makes that menacing. And when he's doing that weird walk out of the hospital, waddling back and forth... By the way, when he stops and he hits the detonator and nothing happens, that was actually a mistake in the filming.
Oh.
The fake explosion didn't go off, and Ledger just went with it and starts, whacking the detonator until it went off, and... Nolan said, we got to keep that.
Yeah. Well, it couldn't reshoot it.
It's so strange, just that waddling side-to-side walk that we don't see anywhere else.
I got to say that the Gotham City Central Hospital, least convincing hospital I've ever seen.
Yeah,
it's like, we're not a hospital. We like to think of it as an office building because it's just not.
Yeah. Not very good.
I got to say also on the negative side, I had to write a note. And this is a thing occasionally. They do this a lot in Star Trek Discovery for reasons I don't understand. Stop moving the goddamn camera. Do not orbit the actors. You're making me dizzy. Stop it. Stop it. I don't understand the whole point of this.
Did you have any I call no way moments? I get those and sometimes in superhero movies or in any of the action movies.
I mean, a good deal of the chasing scenes. There's stuff that happens to cars and... also the big, why is there a parade with the entire police force walking down Main Street? It's like, don't commit any crimes right now. We're having a funeral, so you could, thank you. No.
My thing both involve falling.
Okay.
When the Joker tosses Rachel off the building, and Batman grabs onto her, and they plummet about 15 stories, but he's got his cape out, sort of, and they land on a friggin' car, and they're, you okay? Yeah, you? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't buy that.
No. Either. And also, when the Joker falls off the building at the end, and Batman catches him with the rope, all I'm thinking of, yep, it's Gwen Stacy. He just broke his neck.
Yeah. Right. Which they did both in the comic and the movie.
Yeah. Although, again, I like that scene when he hauls the Joker back up, and they're shooting him, so even though the Joker is hanging upside down, they shoot him right side up.
Yeah.
Which is like, of course, the world, it doesn't matter. His world is always upside down or always right side up for him. He's completely oriented differently. And it's kind of this unintentional, ironic moment where the Joker says to him, I think you and I will be doing this forever.
Yeah.
It's like you didn't even get to do it for one more movie.
Yeah. How about in the middle of the film where Batman becomes a super spy in Hong Kong?
That was odd. That's the first time, and I think one of the only times we see Batman as Batman, and we see Bruce Wayne do this a few times, in another country, or in fact, outside of Gotham.
Yeah.
And that was just odd. That there was it was jarring.
Yeah.
But it still worked, but it was very James Bond.
I mean, I just kept waiting for dun 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 dun.
I thought when the plane grabbed we were going to hear ba da 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 da.
Well, we're getting towards that point. I want to bring up those questions that we ask, and the first one is: does this sequel feel like a natural continuation of the original movie's story? And I know you wanted to bring this up as a point with our sequel, so why don't you go ahead and do that if you would? Okay, it brings up an interesting question to me in terms. Comic book movies, are their sequels the same as, say, other sequels? Most of them we see are action movies, but there are others. Hell, you got Bridget Jones' Diary has a sequel. You have romantic comedies that have sequels. You have comedies that have sequels. Comic book movies, the sequel often feels a little different. It's like another issue, which is what it's supposed to feel like. In that way, it does feel very organic. The story is a continuation. They talk about Batman's been here for this long. It continues the relationship with Rachel, as opposed to the other Batman movies, the Tim Burton, etc., where there was a different woman in it every time. Yeah, Vicky Vale and not Vicky Vale.
Vicky Vale and
not Vicky Vale.
Chase Meridian and...
Okay.
Chase Meridian.
I think that's my new name. Chase Meridian. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. It's literally a howitzer explosion guy,
Yeah.
It's just like, this just sounds cool. But I think it is. I think sequels to superhero movies have a different feel to them than they do to a lot of the other action movies or to any of the other movies. Because comic books are meant to be sequential. They're meant to have additional chapters, and you expect the character to continue. You expect the storyline to continue.
Right, but we don't end with a sequel grab going, uh-oh, there's somebody hanging over a pit of tigers.
Yeah, but we don't need it. It's not necessary in a superhero movie.
Yeah. I can agree. Think? Well, as I said, I watched the other film. I had to fast forward through it a little bit just because, quite honestly, there's some really slow parts.
There are.
The one thing I'll say does not feel natural, again, Gotham City looks like a totally different place. That whole The Narrows, just like you see, they make basically the first film. They're trying to pretend it's not Chicago, and this film are like, yeah, there's Bob Newhart, so it's Chicago. They show you the river. They show you Chicago, and there's like, so where's this Narrows? Because I don't see any island. So the whole like center point of the second half of the first Batman film is physically not here. Again, that hospital looks terrible. I mean, it really just looks like an office building on the lot.
Okay. But other than the look.
But, again, like Max is saying, this feels more like another chapter in the continuing adventures of Batman. So, in a way, it's a sequel. In a way, it isn't. It's not directly following. And that's good, because quite honestly, I would hate to have seen them. It's hopeless enough between the first two films that you'd like to think that they've made some leeway towards crime, which apparently they have. And I love that scene where it's like 547 counts of corruption, 627 counts of all this stuff, and like, who is gonna try all this? And sadly, because they killed a judge, nobody. So I think it does, and I think you're right that, especially with the Marvel films, it's like each one is a chapter in a greater whole. It doesn't need to follow the next day or the next week. The other question is, does this, and I think I know where this is going, does this sequel surpass the original, and does it need to?
I think we've already answered that. Yes, this is a much better movie, largely because of Heath Ledger. Yeah. But also because I don't think there are any bad performances in here.
No.
And there were in the first movie. I'm sorry, Katie Holmes, you just forgettable. And I think there were a couple of others. Some of the other.
You're forgettable.
Like whoever the heck the crime boss, Falcone, who the actor is decent, but the performance was just like. In fact, the actor's terrific. I think that was. I can never remember his name. He's this classic English actor.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, you know who I mean. He's that guy in that thing that time. But they made him uninteresting. I mean, honestly, Sal. Eric Roberts' character was more interesting in this than the one in there. Yeah, the first one had some less than stellar performances. It tried to cram too much in, and I think this one is vastly superior, and I think it needed to be. I think if it was going to continue the Batman franchise, it had to be better because the first one was okay. It had to knock it out of the park, and I think it did.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I'm sure that they're going to relaunch it again, and we're going to have to see his origin story again. Although I did think it was interesting that in that first film, they were seeing an opera as opposed to The Legend of Zorro, which was the original thing that they went to see. Although I got to say, they put the opera house in like the worst section.
Oh yeah, the opera district went way down in Gotham City.
Yeah. And I agree on both of your points. I do think it's a better film, although I do have some reservations. And I think that I think Nolan, DC, whomever decided this was like, we need to take this stuff seriously. It's going to be a big deal. Our properties are languishing. They're not doing anything. We need to make this a thing. And I think one of the things that they decided to do, besides making it ridiculously dark and gritty, is they said, this can't be superheroes the way we're used to superheroes. It has to be like, for one thing, Batman's just a guy. He's a rich guy. Okay. And yes, he's got Butler, he's got Alfred, he's got Lucius Fox, which is a new character to this franchise and a very welcome one. But he's just out there fighting the best way he knows how with his fists. And the best part is, in the best Superman and Batman stories, is Batman can still take on Superman. He finds ways.
Yep. It's because he's smart. That his superpower is he's wicked smart.
Not here.
Not so much here, but we don't see it as much in this. But because that's less interesting to watch. Let me sit here and analyze data.
Well.
But yeah.
The problem is that when you do this, and you say, well, here's this first film, which is generally well received, and people like the take on Batman. It's new, it's different, it's exciting. Well, let's take it up a notch. Is that you're also saying, when we make another one, we have to do that again.
Yeah.
And yeah. So yes, I would say yes to both of those things. This case, I think if they wanted to continue in this vein and they wanted to be taken seriously, as opposed to they had to turn it up a notch. I've gone through most of my notes, and of course, we are getting to that secret part of the episode.
Oh yeah, but couple of other things I wanted to bring up. One, I always loved the Joker, the way when he says to him, when Batman's saying, well, then why are you trying to kill me? And he just looks at him in horror and goes, I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? That's like, wow. I thought that was great. It really did spell out the whole idea of how they're the same side, the two sides of the same coin, in effect. They balance each other. And I thought it also brings up a really interesting aspect of the Batman character, which has been addressed here and there. The line that Batman won't cross. And it comes up in the comic book, it comes up all over the place. He won't kill anymore. So he won't.
Well, to be fair, that goes back to like the late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
And I think actually somewhere in the mid 40s, like the guns went away fairly quickly.
They didn't last. But yeah, it's the whole thing is Batman doesn't kill. And it raises the question, but if you had let the Joker fall, which, by the way, he did to Ra's al Ghul, he said, I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
Right.
How many lives would he save doing that? Because, as someone pointed out, after the first time you caught him, every person the Joker killed, that was your fault. You're responsible.
Sure.
I think this movie plays with that. It doesn't really go into it that much. It ties it way too much in with the idea of, well, I'm a good man. I'm truly good, so, that's not what I do.
Except but I do throw dogs.
I do toss dogs, and I won't kill. I will permanently disable people. I will maim them. I will shatter bones, but I don't kill.
Yeah, you drop me, I won't die from this height. I'm counting on it.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he throws Eric Roberts off a building and breaks both his legs.
Yeah.
It's like, what if he twisted and you hit his head? You could have easily killed him. But anyway, I like that they address that and that they say maybe that's not necessarily a benefit. Maybe it's a flaw. Or maybe it isn't. I like that they leave it to us. I was also a little sorry. We get Anthony Michael Hall in this as a muckraking journalist. Originally, he was going to be Jack Ryder, who really hardcore DC nerds know as the Creeper, who was, in fact, a muckraking journalist who also became a slightly crazy superhero. I was sorry they didn't keep that as a background. I'm really glad they didn't try to bring him in as another character, as another superhero. But that's pretty much all I've got.
I mean, I was hoping for Clock King, but whatever.
If you're not going to give me Calendar Man, I don't want to hear it.
Calendar Man does whatever a calendar can. Anyway, shall we get to that point?
Let us.
The Roundup.
So, Max.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you didn't like this film.
Oh, yeah.
Max hated this film. He thought
did.
The performances sucked and blah, blah, blah. So, Max, go give us your wrap-up.
I do like this. I think this remains one of my favorite superhero movies. It remains one of my favorite DC superhero movies by a long stretch.
That's not hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's appropriate because it's part of the trinity of DC that they've done well, because they've done Batman well and they've done Wonder Woman well. Anyway.
Hey, at the time, I really enjoyed the Superman film.
Christopher Reeve's Superman were terrific. I thought the first two were were really well done, and for their time looked wonderful, and I like them too. But if we're talking contemporary DCU stuff, although technically this isn't part of the DCU, it didn't exist yet.
Well, and also it's not played by Ben Affleck.
Yes, or now Robert Pattinson.
Because that's going to be great.
Hey, I'll give him a chance. Apparently he was great in The Lighthouse. Apparently the guy actually can act. It's just going to be hard to see, I'm going to keep expecting Batman to suddenly pull out a piece of wood and yell, "Expecto Patronum!" Or he'll start
he
sparkling.
Act, he just chooses not to.
Or he'll start sparkling. But anyway. What about you?
I like 2/3 of this film. I honestly think that I would rather that Two-Face was not in it.
See that?
I think that Two-Face doesn't really add anything, although the loss of Harvey Dent does.
I can see what you mean. You would be glad to have Harvey Dent in it, but not Two-Face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd almost rather that Harvey Dent died. Because now we've got this supervillain, which quite honestly, here's one of your I don't believe this moments. The amount of infection that you would have got with having that big an opened burn wound within moments. You like, and it's right next to your brain, no problem. And your eyeball is just no. And I get it because they're trying to make it as, they're trying to say, yeah, we read the comics, so we'll actually do something like the comics. The Harvey, the Two-Face part doesn't work for me. I don't think it adds anything, but Harvey Dent does, so it's a weird dichotomy there.
Interesting.
I'd like to have had Harvey Dent and honestly never had Two-Face. The performances are terrific. It is so dark, though. I mean, I remember it being dark, but I didn't know it was dark. It's violent as hell. They really are finally saying, yeah, we know this was originally meant for kids. We don't care if they ever see this.
Yeah.
In fact, you probably shouldn't bring your kids to this.
This is definitely not a kids' movie.
In fact, the kids that are in this, we had to blindfold when they weren't shooting.
I was always a little surprised this was a PG-13 movie.
Well, and we could talk about how violence and sex are those, two things and blah, blah, blah. But, if you're a superhero fan, you've probably seen this. In some ways, it is probably the depiction of Batman in movies that is the one. For the people who love the character of Batman and want the darkest, grittiest, most realistic, this is as close as you're ever going to get. I hope. Because if it can get darker than this, I don't want to see it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there'll be one where Batman's got a needle sticking out of his arm and, it turns out that Bruce Wayne did amateur porn. I don't know.
I mean, they never get to the points where we see Tony Stark as an alcoholic, but we get dang close.
Yeah.
He has other issues which work just as well. But I would also say there's one thing that I thought was missing from this that is like generally not missing from superhero movies. Where's the fun? It is not a fun movie. It's really not. I'm not saying it... It's supposed to be escapism, right? So superheroes are supposed to be escapism. And this is not escapism, really. I don't want to be anybody in this film. I want to be... So, in the very, very beginning of the film, there's a guy in the airport who's leaving Gotham City. I want to be that guy. But, I definitely think it's worth watching. If for nothing else, the performances, Gary Oldman, Heath Ledger, Christian Bale. Of course, whenever you've got... I always think his name is Malcolm. The guy who plays Lucius Fox's name is...
Morgan Freeman.
Thank you. Morgan Freeman is always good. Michael Caine, again, even in terrible films, Jaws 2, 3, Jaws 3, Jaws
4,
3.
Jaws 4, whatever.
It's Michael Caine. He's always fun in some way.
We said
sure.
that. Yeah, but
we have some business that you should.
We have some business to wrap up.
Thank you.
Yes, if you enjoyed this, you can always check out all of our other podcasts. We have on the whole back catalog at our website, maxmikemovies.com. You can also find them on the podcast app of your choice, the iTunes podcast app, Google, iHeartRadio. We're also on Spotify. You can find us on social media, on Facebook or Twitter under Max Mike Movies. And you can, of course, always email us at maxmikemovies.com. You can send us your fiendish plans, your diabolical plots.
Don't forget the stamp.
Yeah, don't forget your e-stamp. But
and remember, we are looking for feedback about that.
We want to think about doing this thing for Clubhouse. Or if people have a suggestion for a format that's reachable by more platforms, let us know.
Yeah.
But now that we're done with this week, what's happening next week?
Well, I think we're going to continue in the dark, gritty, serious vein.
Are we?
Yes. You don't believe me, do you?
I think you're lying, Grandpa.
Who are you calling Grandpa? We are going to be looking into another sequel, because that's what we're doing in this particular... Yes. And you would think that we would use this one to wrap up the series, but not quite. Because, yes, next week we are going to be looking at The Mummy 2.
Or The Mummy Returns, yep.
All this in The Mummy 2.
Dun, 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 dun.
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.